Auditors collect a variety of different types of audit evidence when testing these management assertions. We could see some examples here of the types of evidence that they actually collect. For instance, oral information is basically just when the auditor is going out and questioning management about the activities of the company. Compare that to visual information where the auditor actually inspects some activities of the client. Oftentimes, auditors will inspect internal control activities such as a physical inventory count to get evidence that the process is actually operating effectively. And also, auditors are going to spend a lot of time looking over paper documents such as sales or lease contracts, as well as electronic information. And this is really critical for larger companies especially, to make sure that their IT systems are actually operating effectively. So auditors will spend a lot of time inspecting the internal controls surrounding the production of electronic information, because at the end of the day, they're going to rely on that electronic information to conduct the audit. So if there's weak internal controls surrounding a company's electronic information, typically auditors are going to have to kind of do more work down the road when they're doing the detailed testing of individual accounts. Now, when auditors are collecting audit evidence, they need to keep in mind the idea of sufficiency of evidence and also how appropriate evidence is. So sufficient evidence just refers to the sheer quantity of evidence being gathered. So did the auditor actually collect enough information to make an informed opinion? The appropriateness refers to the quality of the evidence they collect. Some audit evidence will be appropriate for testing one assertion, but not another. So the auditors have to basically use their professional judgment not only to determine how much evidence to collect, but what type of evidence to collect. So we could see here when we have a situation with a high risk assertion that, our risk of material misstatement is high. We talked about this back in chapter 4, where we have a situation with high inherent risk and high control risk. That means from the get-go, there's a higher than average possibility that there's material misstatements in the financials. So in this case, we have to set our detection risk very low, meaning the auditor is going to be super diligent to collect sufficient and appropriate evidence. So we're going to have to collect more evidence in this case than if we had a low risk assertion. So notice in this example here, we have low inherent and control risk, meaning we think there's a very low possibility that something's going to be misstated. So in that case, we could take on higher detection risk, meaning we don't have to collect as much sufficient and appropriate evidence. Of course, we want to follow the auditing standards. We want to follow all the rules and do our due diligence, but the auditor needs to keep in mind the type of engagement they're working on. And when they go through this risk assessment phase, they kind of get a feel for the different risks that affect various accounts and assertions. So at this point in the audit, they decide, what is going to be the audit plan, what's going to be this specific audit program, all right, to collect the necessary evidence. Now, the relevance of information is really critical to auditors. So information from one source may be relevant to a particular assertion, but not to another assertion. So we need to think about specific assertions and what type of evidence is going to be relevant to those assertions. So for instance, let's think about a situation where an auditor is trying to test the completeness assertion for accounts payable. So basically, let's say a company has like $20 million listed on their balance sheet as a liability for accounts payable. Now, the completeness assertion is basically saying that that $20 million completely captures all the accounts payable the company has. So the auditor can go back and look at documents. They could look at maybe all the vendors' invoices or a file that the management has compiled with outstanding vendor invoices, and they could check to make sure all those invoices are actually input into the accounting system and are showing up. So that would be a test for completeness. So that type of audit evidence would help to test for the completeness assertion. Also, management can contact vendors that the company's used in the past. Maybe there's a vendor that the company's bought a lot of stuff off of in the past, but the auditor doesn't see any accounts payable to that vendor this period. They could contact that vendor to see whether in fact management actually does owe them money. Does the company owe them money? So that's another way to gather audit evidence about that completeness assertion. Notice if the auditor went and looked at a schedule of accounts payable and went back and contacted the companies that were already listed. So if we look at that $20 million that's sitting on the balance sheet in AP, if the auditor goes and contacts all the individual vendors that the company says it owes money to, well, that's audit evidence. That's great. That helps us test the existence assertion, basically showing that management does in fact owe the money to the folks it says it owes them to. But that's not really a relevant assertion, and that's not testing for completion. So existence really isn't a super relevant assertion in regards to accounts payable, because we don't think management's gonna be reporting accounts payable that they actually don't have. We don't think management actually has $15 million in accounts payable in reality, but they're reporting $20 million. That's usually not an issue for a company. An issue might be that they report $20 million where they actually owe $30 million, right? So certain forms of audit evidence are going to clarify one assertion, but maybe not perhaps another. So that's kind of this logical connection with an assertion. Also, the period of time affects the source of evidence. We want to make sure the evidence we're collecting actually relates to the assertions that we're currently testing and overseeing. And in addition to this relevance of audit evidence, also the reliability of audit evidence is really going to be important when we're thinking about different sources of evidence. So we want to keep in mind whether the evidence is accurate and complete, whether it's authentic, and whether it's susceptible to management bias. So we want to look at each one of these different factors in reliability when we're thinking about appropriate audit evidence. So we're going to look at each one of these different types of factors that can affect the reliability of the audit evidence. Now, notice the source of the evidence is really critical, right? So audit evidence that the auditor themselves has collected, all right, that's going to be more reliable than evidence that's presented by management. So also, if we have a situation where the auditor is collecting information from an external party, typically that's better, more reliable audit evidence than if we're relying on something internal within the company. Because when we're auditing the company, there might be incentives for people working within the company to kind of mislead the auditors, and it's unlikely that parties external to the company, such as bankers or the company's vendors, are going to want to mislead the auditors when they're trying to confirm different information about the corporation. So we have more reliance on external information. We also have more reliance on information that's created in an environment with effective internal controls. Remember, we talked about that earlier. If internal controls are operating effectively, all right, that gives us the ability as the auditor to rely on the information generated by these systems in more detail. Now, accuracy and completeness is another big factor affecting reliability of audit information. So we want to make sure that if we're relying on a piece of information, it's actually accurate. So this can be an issue again when we're relying on information that management provides to us, because they might have an incentive to kind of mislead the auditor or paint things in a certain light that puts them, that makes them look better, basically. Now, authenticity kind of is related to this as well. If we're looking at documents, we'd prefer to look at original source documents rather than copies. So if we're looking at a lease document, we'd rather look at the original lease document as opposed to a photocopy of the lease, because it's less likely that the original document is going to be altered or changed. Now, that even if we do have the original document, there's no guarantee that it's accurate. There could be some instances where management maybe kind of changes the wording within the document or whatnot. So it's hard for us to tell. We can't have 100% assurance that the documents are correct, even when it is the original copy. And actually, the auditing standards don't require the auditor to authenticate documents. Auditors are not experts in document authentication, but if the auditor does have concern about the authenticity of a document, then they could provide or perform additional procedures to kind of test the veracity of the document. Sometimes they'll have an expert in, let's say, forgeries come in to look at a document if they are actually really worried that maybe something's been falsely prepared or altered by management. And when auditors are conducting the audit, remember, they need to obtain reasonable assurance. They can't give absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. So they need to find persuasive evidence to draw this conclusion of reasonable assurance. So having a large quantity of evidence may not be enough to make it persuasive if they don't have appropriate evidence. So it's really important to think about all these different factors that make evidence relevant, to be on the lookout for any issues that might pop up when you're actually reviewing different forms of audit evidence.